Start recording. Okay, Chris, we're going to get started here, and here we go. 1, 2, 3. Welcome to the Lifeforce Showcase Series number 5. We are going to be discussing natural health this evening with a gentleman, Dr. Chris Chelabowski, I believe is the correct pronunciation. And just want to let you know that we do have a disclaimer on this video, and we personally, I'm not professional or giving any advice. And if you'd like to, Chris, you can start in and let us know if you have any disclaimer that you'd like. Welcome to the call and welcome to the showcase.
Thanks for having me. It's pronounced Lebowski, Dr. Chris Lebowski. That's a tricky one.
Thank you.
Silent. Yeah. Well, by its very nature and what I'm going to discuss tonight, I cannot provide any health information around the coronavirus or COVID-19, and you'll come to understand why that is in a little bit. But nothing I say is intended to prevent or treat that virus.
Thank you. Great. Well, let's see. This is sort of a create as we go type of broadcast. I don't have a whole lot of preparation. I've spoken to you about a few things in the past, and I just really wanted to give you an open forum to discuss some of the things we talked about a little earlier. So if you'd like to just lead off and maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and what your interests are, and as far as what you'd like to bring to us tonight.
Sure.
Appreciate that.
Sure. Well, so I'm an Oregon physician. I've been practicing in Oregon since 2007. I'm a naturopathic doctor, and my practice in Ashland, Oregon is focused on chronic degenerative multi-system disease. So my average patient is someone with Lyme disease or cancer or multiple infections, toxicity, complex people with complex disease processes. And that's really what I love doing. And inside of that is a real interest around infections. So I've spent, the greater proportion of my career working with people with infections. So when in December, I started hearing about this novel coronavirus in China, I started paying very, very close attention. And the week before Christmas, I was already glued to my screen watching as the cases progressed around the world, mostly in China at that point. But then as I watched it every day, and we eventually got a few cases in the US, and then it started to spread around the world, I was glued to my phone. And at that time, I was terrified. I was absolutely sure that this was the big one, that this was the pandemic that I had been waiting for my whole career and knew was coming, but it scared the bejesus out of me. And I spent probably 6 weeks pretty much alone in that, because most of the other doctors I knew weren't really paying attention to it. Certainly the average person had no idea what was brewing. I didn't speak with my family about it because, to be honest, I hoped that China was just going to lock it down and it was going to go away. And so I didn't really think there was any utility in scaring my wife or anybody else. And I kind of lived in this lonely, fearful place for about 6 weeks, stockpiling medicines in the clinic, listening to other doctors out of China, seeing what they were doing, and sort of, gathering the armamentarium and trying to understand what we were going to do about this thing. And one of the big things about it too is that it was China. So we didn't have any good information for a long time. It wasn't until around February where you could even start to trust anything that was coming out of there. So there was this time period where we're trying to figure out what's going to happen and what this thing is like, and you're essentially getting bad information or no information at all. So that made for a very unique scenario. Had this originated in another country, we would have known a lot more right away. Then come March, I start treating some cases of it. we start getting some cases through the office here. We start getting some cases via telemedicine, people that we treat around the world, and starting to see how it was going. And, you know, from the beginning, it was not a complex disease. So sort of the basic therapeutics that we use, which I'll talk about in a little while, were going really well with the cases. You know, we were using herbs, we were using homeopathy, we were using vitamins to treat those people, and all the cases went really well. So there was a little bit of this cognitive dissonance from what we were hearing in the media and hearing on the news to what I was actually experiencing in practice. And that was the first sort of chink in the wall of the story that my cases and all my close colleagues who are also interested in epidemics and interested in infectious disease, their cases were going well too. That's not to say that people didn't die. You know, we know people have died around the world from this, but the people that I know and the cases I was dealing with, everything was going really well. So we're kind of going along at a clip, and then May comes, and one afternoon, I get a letter in the mail from the Federal Trade Commission. And I sent some of that stuff over today to you, David, to have in case people wanted to look at that. And I would ask that anybody that's on this call now or in the future, not to spread those letters or send them anywhere, but you're welcome to look at that as evidence to substantiate what I'm saying, is that we got a letter from the Federal Trade Commission that essentially said we were under investigation for promoting that we had preventative or curative medicines and that we had stated this publicly around the coronavirus. So, you know, here's a little doctor in a little town getting a letter from the Federal Trade Commission saying we've broken some law about talking about treating a coronavirus, which every doctor treats coronaviruses every year. So this was another little chink in the wall of reason here that really started to get my mind turning that something was going on here. So I got that letter. The request in the letter was to immediately remove a YouTube video, sanitize our website, anything we had talked about as prevention or treatment for the coronavirus. And I did all those things. And I thought, oh, well, that went away. Well, a week later, we got a hand-delivered letter from the Oregon Department of Justice telling us that we were under investigation for those same claims. So it was at that point that I contacted an attorney, and she said, oh yeah, you're one of many, many clinics that this is happening to around the country. The Department of Justice, as well as some of the other big boards, have made it a mission of theirs to make sure that people aren't allowed to say that they have anything for this infection. Well, right there you go, what is that? I'm a doctor. It's my job to treat whatever walks through the door. I don't turn someone away because they have a particular type of infection, you know? And by the very nature of the work I do, people come in with strange, unusual things all the time. And so to have some regulatory board tell me that I can't say that I know how to deal with a particular type of infection, it was at that point that I realized that there was something rotten in Denmark. There was something going on way bigger than just a novel coronavirus out of China. And so it sort of spun off of there. You know, in regards to that case, essentially and I gave this to you also, we had to sign a letter after, you know, spending money and time with an attorney. We signed a letter that said that we will not publicly state that we have anything that prevents or treats COVID-19. It was a letter of voluntary assurance. And the minimum fine, if we break that, is $25,000. So here I am, a doctor just trying to help people, and all of a sudden I've got lawyer fees and I'm faced with potentially having legal issues if I in any way state that I know how to do this thing. And let me go back a little bit too. You know, the way they found this is that I had put up a YouTube video essentially telling people that things like vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, elderberry, licorice. These were things that have been used in other coronaviruses and or had been used clinically by people with some success. These very basic things, I mean, vitamins, herbs that have been around forever. I wasn't packaging and trying to sell Corona Cure 19. You know, I wasn't trying to get rich off of this. I was telling people things that they could go down to their local health food store to purchase and use when we're in a state of panic and fear. You know, at that point, people were barely talking about hydroxychloroquine. They were barely talking about remdesivir. There was really no widespread mention of zinc and melatonin and all these things that came out of the naturopathic community, which I'm part of. And people didn't know what to do. They have this great panic about a pandemic and they don't have any options. So myself and many other natural medicine practitioners, this has happened to thousands of people, we're just trying to offer up some simple basic solutions for people. And myself and many others got hit with these letters. So, you know, fast forward a couple months later, and like I said, at that point, I knew that this had a lot more to do with something else than just a virus. So we continued to treat people. People continued to get well. We sanitized anything that would say that we had anything that could prevent or treat this. And like I said at the beginning of this, I can't publicly state that I have anything. You know, all I can say is that I know there are people that are treating this and they're doing quite well with natural measures. So to me, what made me interested in speaking with you guys is that when I met with Max and I met with you, David, that you guys were really focused on the future. You were really clear that what's going on right now is a sign of these systems starting to fall apart. This is a clue that the medical system, which already is in shambles, is starting to disintegrate. And we know that the other systems are starting to fall apart too. And so those of us that have gone through this and seen the hypocrisy, have seen the end goal of this being monetary gain for a small proportion of the population, while the rest of the population suffers needlessly. Those of us that see this and want to do something about it, I'm very interested in that. Because I believe the medicine that I practice is really the medicine of the future. And I believe there's going to be a major place for it when the current medical paradigm, which is overburdened with waste, which creates tons of toxicity, which keeps people sick for profit, when that system finally erodes and disintegrates, and I think this is going to be a big piece of that, this pandemic, when that falls apart, I want to be standing there with all of my colleagues and on the shoulders of all the giants who came before me to offer up sustainable, affordable, intelligent, safe, holistic medicine that works as well as anything in the current medical paradigm, if not better. So, you know, that's where I stand in reference to you guys. What I would like to state, though, too, is that, you know, I do believe that there's a virus that people are contracting and people are dying. You know, I've treated enough of it to see that there's something there. And there's a lot of people dying. I mean, you could say there isn't, but there are around the world. Lots of people have died from this. But I think it's also become very clear of why those people are dying from this. And that, once again, points to the problems with our medical system. That the folks that are perishing from this infection, they're sick. Those people are already toxic. They're already full of chronic infections. Most of them are in a demographic where their health is already fragile in some way. Many of them are on polypharmacy. Many of them have hypertension, diabetes, a lot of obesity, you know, a lot of the things that plague Americans today because we've categorically ignored our health and assumed that an answer will come from outside of us. And I think it's a perfect analogy for what's going on in our medical system, that it's very clear that the people that have already, you know, suffered at the hands of it are the ones that are going to suffer at the hands of this disease also. And that's a shame, and it doesn't have to be that way. So I also took up the task of writing a book about this subject, which should be out in the spring. It's called The Virus and the Host: How to Get and Stay Healthy in the Age of Novel Infectious Disease, because I want people to know the truth about this. I want people to understand what happened and why people died and what they could have or what they should do in the future when we have another viral pandemic, which I think we will. I think this is the beginning.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much for just laying this out for us. You know, I guess I've known most of what you've spoken of in some way, form, or fashion. And I think that there are people that have an inkling as to a lot of the things that have been going on. But as you say, it's a big mess. I mean, these authorities are coming in and trying to rule you like you know, we're in some tyrannical reality. And I think that's a lot of we're seeing dissolve right now, is this whole tyrannical directive. As you know, we've discussed things like the Earth Restoration Plan, and that is really what we're looking at being developed right now. As things are falling apart, we are going to need to recreate the new systems and the new ways of being, the new medicine, the new transportation, the new money. All of those things will be recreated. So I think the first part of that really is a lot of people are just asleep and they don't know the truth. And so we're doing what we can to awaken people and with these broadcasts, educate people as to what's the real truth of the matter is, because we're definitely not hearing it on mainstream media at all. And with that, you know, we work with Lifeforce. Lifeforce is, you know, the group that we're putting together to unify and bring in these new systems that we're describing. Like you just say, the holistic medicine. We need to get away from the pharmaceuticals and things like that. I mean, I don't know, I hadn't really had a chance to tell you a little bit about my story, but, you know, I was a late stage alcoholic for 30 years. And I almost died about 10 years ago. And I was told at the time that I would be dead, that I probably wouldn't live more than a year or two by the doctors. And I just decided that I didn't want to die and that I believed that I could heal myself. And I kept on a path of just trying to find the right medicine. And every time I went the normal AMA route of doctors, they looked at me as an alcoholic, as somebody who just needed to die, who had lived out their day. Yeah. But I knew that there was a better way, and I knew that if I did the right things and kept seeking, I could find the holistic methods and means to hopefully make myself better or well. And I've literally been able to do that. You know, I was on the liver transplant list. I'm not any longer. Most of my health is in pretty good condition considering my past. So I am an example of what holistic medicine can do, and the belief that you can cure yourself if you seek out and you do the right things to reverse whatever your issue is, or find a method to heal and cure it. So, you know, I'm very much,
I guess David, I mean, that's one of the things that I think is so disturbing, and why I wanted to talk about this tonight, is that it's one thing if you just don't know that alternatives exist, right? Because alternative or complementary medicine is only a small part of the medicine in the world. It's one thing if you don't know if it exists, but it's another thing if it's being squashed. It's another thing if it's being censored. It's another thing if doctors are getting put out of business, or colleagues of mine had their credit card machines turned off. because they're talking about an alternative, you know? So, and you know, this assault around COVID, we've actually been watching this in my office for years. This has been coming down the pike with the FDA and other organizations for years. And I'll tell you what I mean by that is that in my office, we do a lot of intravenous work. You know, we do high dose vitamin C and IV chelation and IV ozone and things like that. And what we've seen over the last several years is the FDA coming down on the compounding pharmacies that make the injectable medicines and making it really hard for pharmacies to continue to make this. They put them through such regulations and make it so difficult that pharmacies go out of business. And that's just the beginning of the story. I mean, I can give you 100 examples of that, but back to the point that it's one thing to not know it's there. It's another thing to have it censored.
And Chris, in terms of that, how ironic it is when medical malpractice is, as I understand it, the third leading cause of death in this country, claiming many more people than COVID. So them trying to stop you is, and here's another thing that's blatantly ridiculous. These health agencies that came after you, they are now, here, let me tell you the Oregon law that they're breaking, because I have it right here. It's Oregon Law 677.080, Prohibited Acts. It's a Class C felony for people who are not medical professionals and not licensed to dispense medical advice, right? These very same, like Oregon Health Authority and OSHA, are supposed to police the unlicensed practice of medicine. Instead, what are they actually doing? They are directing businesses to do exactly that. Regular employees at businesses are acting like doctors, are impersonating doctors, are giving people medical advice. It's a violation of the law that they themselves are supposed to enforce, but they're doing the exact opposite. They're asking businesses to break the law knowingly, but yet they go after you for trying to help people.
Yep.
It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. Yeah, we've seen, you know, back to the idea of the FDA and them regulating compounding pharmacies, where people, you would know compounding pharmacies by places where women typically get bioidentical hormones, or people can get, you know, sort of less common pharmaceuticals, typically a smaller pharmacy, not a chain pharmacy, someone that's interested in more holistic medicine. We have several of them in the Valley here. And what we saw first and foremost is that the FDA went to these pharmacies and they started with the drugs that treat cancer. Anything we had in natural medicine that we were getting through compounding pharmacies, they went after those things first, and they categorically made them illegal to compound. Now that woke me up to this a couple of years ago. When you see that, when you see all the great cancer treating compounds disappearing from your pharmacy, you know something's up. So, you know.
In response to that, Chris, I mean, to my knowledge, cancer treatment really exists to keep the cancer going, to profit off it. You know, the treatments they have don't really work. And it's been, I don't know, I'm not even sure, 40, 50 years, there's no cure for cancer, really. But I guess in 4 months, there's a coronavirus vaccine, though.
Yeah.
Very fishy.
Yeah. I would say that a lot of that industry, in my experience, I mean, there's a lot of great oncologists out there who really do want to help people. And there's good integrative oncologists that recognize that there is value to surgery sometimes. There is value to radiation sometimes. There are actually cancers that respond really well to chemotherapeutic agents. But the sort of one size fits all, get them in, blast them with radiation, give them chemotherapy, most of the patients die. It's the slim few that get the right therapeutic in the right amount that then go on to live long, happy lives. And, but you know, I do want to be clear, there are people in there that do care, and there are agents in there that are important. And a lot of my great cancer cases have been working with good oncologists where they recognize the value of naturopathic medicine, and they were judicious about their you know, harsh treatments, those medicines, those chemotherapeutic agents, those radiation is hard on the body. Sometimes it's the exact right thing, but I would agree with you, Max, that I think a lot of it is really not about the patient, but instead about making money, unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, anyway, Chris, yeah, goodness, thank you so much for all of the information you're giving us, because I think it's so important at this time. We're really laying out the facts, and you know, Max is really bringing some great points with the legal aspects. You know, we're basically being shamboozled. I mean, you know, you tell us one thing, but it doesn't line up with the law. So it's sort of like, you know, tyrannical reality where you just do as I say and you don't ask questions. And I think we've all seen that sort of happen in just since this thing has launched in 2019 or 2020. It's like we're living in a different on a different planet or something. But you know, we know that there is a solution, and that's the thing. You know, the Lifeforce is bringing forth a solution. We believe it's a big enough solution to as these old systems disintegrate, to give us the tools and things that we need to be able to produce the new systems that are going to be for the benefit of humanity rather than for the extraction of our energy and resources. So with that, I'm very excited that you've been able to come tonight. I'm very grateful, rather, that you've been able to come and give us this insight. I'm thinking we really just sort of wanted to make this short and sweet, but I really believe we will be having you back on in the near future probably, and especially we'd love to have you on again once you have your book. As your book is available, we'd love to have you talk about that. But you know, we are making a lot of efforts here, actually nationwide, but here in Oregon, we really want to push back in some way, because if we just sit idly and let these laws be violated without any kind of pushback, you know, we're losing all of our constitutional rights. And as you say, you know, as a business person and a doctor, you know, it's difficult if somebody's going to hit you where it hurts, like turn off your credit card processor, or send you a threatening letter where now, you know, you're running maybe a slim budget in COVID season, and now you've got to go spend money on an attorney. It's like they're trying to squeeze us in every which way. You know, these things are going to pass. We know they are, but we have to be on a foundation where we can launch. And that's really what we're trying to do here with this educational series. We're trying to bring these issues to people and let them know that we need people to participate in these changes and assist us in building these new systems, because very few people are aware of the types of issues we're discussing based on my recent, view from talking to dozens and dozens of people. So we need to get the word out, and people need to know there is a solution that's in play, and as it comes about, that we need to move into action and create new systems of being to give us freedom and give us what we need access to. I'd say an example is, you know, there are over 5,000 patents that the Department of Defense has basically put under lock and key. And those patents, for instance, things like medical technologies, medical healings, and cancer cures, all kinds of things like free energy, they're all locked up under lock and key. And we believe that these technologies will be released rather soon, based on the information we have, because we know who now has control of these patents. And these patents are due to be released, and we hopefully will start seeing the technology being used for the benefit of humanity rather than for the control. And I think that sort of summarizes where we're at, and what's been described today is that, you know, we have controls upon us that are not legitimate, that are not constitutional. And we want to see a change. And I think that the people that are here and people like us that are out there, we are the ones that are stepping into action and putting these things in place as time goes on. So I really thank you very much for your time and for all of the information you've given us. If you had anything else you wanted to say, or anyone had more to add, please go right ahead.
I mean, the one thing I would like to say to dovetail with that is that If you go to our practice website, ashlandnaturalmedicine.com, there's a little tab up at the top that says Support Natural Medicine. And we update that frequently, where we give links for people to sign petitions, people to donate to legal causes. We're constantly adding things there because we need that groundswell to protect our natural medicines, because if we don't, they're going away. They're systematically trying to take them away from us. And so I encourage people to go there. It's sort of a repository of ways to be active in that. And we have pushback. The FDA is trying to take away homeopathic medicine right now. They're making a concerted effort to try and do the same thing to the homeopathic pharmacies that they've done to the compound pharmacies. And those medicines could be gone. And those are the medicines that classically people treated pandemics with. Those were the medicines that people used in the cholera epidemics. Those were the ones they used in the Spanish flu. Those were the medicines and the doctors that had the best cure rates, well over what you saw in allopathic medicine. And if those things go away, what are we going to use when the next one comes along? So I encourage people to go there, sign up, sign the petitions, get on the email lists. We need a groundswell of people that are pushing back and protecting our rights for the different medicines that we use.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and thank you for that. I will post the link to your facility, your medical facility, on this video, and you guys can look at and find all of the links for what is discussed here on the YouTube video under the description portion. So, was there anything else, Max? It looked like you might have had a question.
Yeah, I mean, everything we've talked about is spot on and really important. And I guess just to sort of finish, I was just curious, Chris, about maybe just hearing about the kind of medicine, like you mentioned homeopathy, and sort of like how that works, or just because you're talking about this is the future of medicine. So maybe I know some about it, but maybe people watching this don't know what homeopathy is or what a naturopath is, and kind of how you treat it. Just maybe a little bit more information about this kind of medicine that you practice, so people will know what's available in the future.
Sure. So going back historically, at the time of the Spanish flu in the United States of America, the majority of hospitals were homeopathic hospitals. Until the Flexner Report came out, that was funded by the Carnegies and the Rockefellers, that essentially solidified biomedical medicine's hold on the United States medical system. Prior to that, the type of medicine that I practiced was the most predominant form in the United States of America. Most people are unaware of that, because with that report, they systematically went through and squashed natural medicine. They, stated that it was unscientific, that there was no basis for it in, known science. They ran people out of practice. They went into people's practices and smashed their machines and took away their medicines. And so there was this isn't the first time we've seen a systematic attack on natural medicine in the United States. It has a historical precedent. So homeopathy is a couple 100-year-old medicine that was developed by a German physician named Samuel Hahnemann. And it is the use of very minuscule amounts of minerals, plants, or animals in dilution. And so these medicines are safe, non-toxic, extremely effective, and terribly inexpensive. They literally cost pennies for a dose. They're also, by that very nature, non-patentable. So no drug company stands to gain anything by doing research on or selling homeopathic medicines. So really, they just stand in the way of the conventional medical model and their greed. I've found them to be terribly effective in acute infections. They're incredibly effective in people's chronic disease processes. We use them in kids, we use them in adults, we use them in the elderly. There's a long historical record of people using homeopathy safely, gently. And unfortunately, like I said, they don't have anything to gain by it. So in their mind, that needs to go away. Now, that's one of the things I do in my practice and lots of natural medicine doctors do. We also use a lot of botanical treatments. You know, herbal treatments have a long history. Humans have been using herbs. It was the first form of medicine that we're aware of. And this isn't saying like, go out in your backyard and pick something and throw it in a pot and make a tea out of it, which you can do. But what I'm saying is that we have, you know, countless studies on PubMed of the efficacy of herbs. We have tons and tons of scientific research showing that herbs can be effective for anything that ails mankind. And so I think people need to understand that this is a viable, very reasonable choice for a lot of health things, is to go for a plant before we go for a drug. Now, I use some medications in the practice. I can write prescriptions and I do that. But most of the time, I'm going to choose a more gentle, safer, non-toxic intervention first. And then if that doesn't work, then you step it up and you go to a drug. Or if someone comes in on a drug and you want to step them down off that drug, you can use a natural medicine intervention. So these things are safe. They have a long history. The problem in the eyes of conventional medicine is that they can't make a profit off them. They've been around too long. Natural medicine practitioners like myself too, like I said, a lot of us do intravenous work. We deliver nutrients or different drugs intravenously because you can bypass the gastrointestinal tract, which is a fabulous way to treat things. Lots of us are interested in sort of unique technologies like hyperbaric oxygen or PEMF technology, electromagnetic treatments. Lots of us are interested in energetic treatments too. You know, many of us have studied some of these free energy techniques and some of the healing techniques that were around at the turn of the century and are curious about them moving into this new age. You know, people are doing all sorts of fascinating research built off of that stuff that you were alluding to, David. You know, people have come to these technologies in a variety of different ways, and they're viable and they should be studied because most of them are renewable, sustainable, and inexpensive, and scalable too. You know, if we had therapeutics of that nature, we wouldn't be having this constant discussion about rising healthcare costs. If people could have devices in their home or a remedy kit in their home and could treat themselves, we wouldn't be having these discussions. We wouldn't constantly in every election cycle be talking about universal health care. And so I believe that the medicine of the future has to have those aspects associated with it. And I think it's going to happen. I really do. I think people are craving it, and they're not going to stand for anything less than that.
I would encourage you to join the Lifeforce Health and Wellness. You could probably, you know, really, really help with all of this going forward. And thank you. That was really interesting. There were a lot of things I just learned in what you shared. So very impressive, Chris. I really appreciate you presenting this to us.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. People need to know what's going on for sure.
Yes.
People need to know.
Yes. And are you taking new clients?
Sure. Yeah.
I need a doctor, so
Yeah,
great.
new clients.
Great.
Well, thank you so much, Chris, for all of your information, and we really look forward to having you back. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit, I've been stunned by a lot of energy going through today. There's been a lot of energy hit me, human resonance and things like that. So I'm a little bit I'm a little out of sorts.
There's a lot going on the planet right now.
Yeah, it's been, and I was out in the sun and I got a lot of light codes today. So excuse me for being a little off, but I appreciate so much you joining us and taking the time to give us this very important information. And I will list and post everything here on the web page. I just want to thank you again, and thank you, Max and David and for attending, and we'll see you next week on the Showcase Lifeforce educational series. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.